Imagine yourself away from your family for 2 years. You're not allowed to work. You're not allowed to mix with the society. You cannot do anything because without decision and personal number, you are nobody. I just tried to start a new life and enjoy the life again, which I lost it. I lost my smile for almost 2 years.
So this is Khaldun. He came to Sweden 2 years ago during the refugee crisis. He's originally from Syria, and he had to wait in Sweden for 2 years before he got his decision to stay and finally be reunited with his family, as he said, and start a new life. But you might think what this has to do with Agile and DevOps. Well, first of all, thanks for letting us be here and listen to our story. We're from the Swedish Migration Agency. And this is our why. This is our purpose. We're not here in a competitive market. We're not here to make money or make profit. We're here to help human beings coming to Sweden and minimize suffering for people like Khaldun. So that's why if we are able to create software or system that can help our business to take faster decisions, we will minimize his suffering. And also the story he tells us and other refugees that flee throughout Europe, they have one important asset with them, and that's their mobile phone. This is how they communicate. So we need to become digital, we need to become agile, and we need to adapt to our users' needs. So the Swedish Migration Agency has a couple of missions. We process applications from people who want to come to Sweden and visit, or maybe work or study, or be reunited with their families or loved ones. We also help people to return home to their home countries if they want to leave. And we handle applications for people who want to become permanent residents or become Swedish citizens, or protect people like Khaldun, of course. The agency has around 7,000 people employed throughout Sweden in around 50 offices. And we are from the IT department. The IT department is located at the headquarters in a city called Norrköping. Anyone know Norrköping? Some people do, right? Are you Swedes? Yes. Welcome. You don't need our services then, I guess. The IT department has around 300 employees, and we have pretty much everything in-house. We have our own data centers. We have our operations teams working with ITIL, for those of you who listened to the previous talk. We have around 12 Scrum teams working as well. And my name is Jonas. I started at the agency around 5 years ago. Back then, I was the IT security manager. And we're going to tell you about a story that started 2 years ago, when we tried to introduce DevOps and lean thinking into our organization. And back then, I was the IT security manager. But since then, I had the nice opportunity to take over and lead one of our software development units as well. So it's a unit which has 4 development teams, and a security team, and a platform team, and a middleware team.
Yeah, and my name is Daniel, and I'm a solutions architect, and I'm a consultant. I've been at the agency today 5 years, exactly. And my background, I've spent the last 22 years starting up and leading different startups. Yeah. And our story started 2 years ago with an IT department with suffered a lot of problems, both that impacted the business, and with an architecture that really made it hard to do changes. Even small changes needed the delivery of up to 20 different modules, and took about 30 days to deliver. And of course, there was a lot of frustration. The frustration was both within and outside the IT departments. And because of this frustration, there was a lot of pressure on the teams to deliver things very fast, so they have no time to do things like cleanup or innovation. So that made the things even worse with technical debt.
And me, as the security guy back then, I also thought that we didn't do things the right way in terms of security. We were, as many other organizations, we were coming in late. We were finding vulnerabilities late in the process, which was expensive to fix. So we needed to shift left in terms of security. And also, as I said, we introduced Agile around 2009, and we have Scrum teams working with Scrum, but sometimes we don't really follow the Agile manifesto to the full extent in terms of, in this case, we focus sometimes more on the method and the processes instead of focusing on getting the actual work done. And Daniel, you have an example you can show us.
This is a change request for a really tiny change. It's a misleading parameter name in a method. It's a really tiny thing. It takes 5 minutes to fix for a developer. But we didn't fix it. We wrote this Jira, and what did we do with it? Well, we put it in the backlog, and then we planned and planned and planned, so it was in and out of sprints and up and down in priority. I think this is a good example of what queues do to how much it costs with queues. Yeah. So we were these three handsome guys thinking that we have to do something about this. So we had a lunch and we had read the Phoenix project book and we started to talk, and we thought, okay, we have to start this journey. So the first step was to convince the IT board that something has to be done. And we got approved, and we gathered a committee, of course. We are a government after all. And this small group started to reading and listening to podcasts and take a lot of discussions. And we ended up in a concept we called Phoenix. And what we tried to do is to combine more than the traditional definition of DevOps. We tried to put in things like security, business, architecture, culture, and so on. And we used all different tools like the Lean Startup and the DevOps and design thinking. And we made this poster to do some internal promotion of this inside the agency. And the vision was to be Sweden's most awesome workplace, and the mission was to minimize the lead time to business value. So last summer we started a pilot and tried a tiny software thing just to try this out. You can see this like a minimum viable product for this concept. And the results were good. So, and we learned that we have to learn more about continuous integration. So early this year, we started a new initiative to learn more about continuous integration and continuous deployment. And now we are here.
Yeah, and as Daniel said, when we started this 2 years ago, we had some problems that we had identified. Technical debt, no time for innovation. But one thing that was even more alarming was when we talked to some of the team members in our teams. And they said that the engagement in the teams and the motivation was getting lower and lower because of this, because the process was slow. Sometimes we had old techniques. So this was alarming for the IT board as well, because we were perhaps maybe losing employees who would find another job that would be more interesting. So motivation was one thing that we wanted to address as well. The other thing, we also heard that the people working was feeling that there was low trust in our organization. And that's quite typical for being a government agency. There's a lot of oversight and there's a lot of bureaucracy. But those two things are really important, because if you read the State of DevOps report from 2016, and if you read the Accelerate book by Nicole Forsgren, these two things are drivers for efficiency. If you don't have trust and you don't have motivation, you won't get any success in this. So this was one of the drivers that we told the IT board 2 years ago, that we need to address this because of not only the technical problems we had, but the employees were not feeling great. So we started looking at how do we drive motivation. How many of you have read the book Drive by Daniel Pink? Then you know this, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but he mentions 3 things that drives motivation. So the first is purpose, and that's the movie we showed you. Why you're at the workplace will drive motivation. The second thing is autonomy. If you go to work and you're able to decide a little bit about what you do, how you do it, and when you do it, you are autonomous and you will feel motivated. And this is what DevOps is all about as well. And the last thing he says that drives motivation is mastery. If you feel that you're good at something, you're an expert, or at least that you're improving your skill set, you will become even more motivated. So these are the things that we wanted to address as well, besides the technical and the architectural problems we saw. So we started looking at the term that many people talk about. For example, Stephen Meyer yesterday have talked about transformational leadership. He has some great presentations from previous summits. I think it was last in San Francisco. So if you want to deep dive into transformational leadership, you can do that. But for us, it's about leading with your heart. You have to lead with your heart and believe in your employees and build trust by having transparency as well. And what we've learned throughout this journey is also that you have to, as a leader and as every individual in the organization has to challenge status quo, because there are things that we need to change in our organization in order to change culture. And in the end, it's about changing culture. We wanted to create a space for collaboration because we saw that teams didn't collaborate. We wanted to change the culture to learning and improvement, and also to time for innovation. And in order to change culture, you change how people behave. So we started out by thinking, okay, so how do we change the behavior of people? And we asked our employees as well, what do you think that we need to do in our organization to drive motivation and innovation and collaboration? And they actually came up with a lot of good ideas that we listened to. Not all of these are based on the Phoenix initiatives. It's based on everything that the people have done throughout our organization the last couple of years. So the first thing we did was I talked to one of our employees who has a background in mobile development. And at that time, we didn't have the capacity or the ability at our organization to build mobile apps. This was something we needed to do to follow our strategy. So he organized a small hackathon, a code night, where we invited the IT department. We shared some pizzas, and those who wanted started learning building mobile apps in order to increase collaboration and learning. What we also did, we wanted to spread good ideas and innovate. So we arranged something we called MigSpeak, which is an open space session, exactly the same as the lean coffee we have here at the summit. So we actually had 4 speakers that spoke about different concepts, and then we had roundtable discussions with different people from throughout the IT department in order to get good ideas to work further on. And actually, the movie about Khaldun that you saw was part of one of these ideas that one of us employees had. So he talked about empathy at the workplace, and he wanted to spread the feeling of purpose. So we encouraged him to do these 3 interviews. This is one of them, and he interviewed 2 other people, end users or clients to the agency. And these interviews we've used inside the IT department to show to all of the teams and discuss what this actually means for us. Also what they have, the feeling they have when they use our IT systems, where our electronic applications, for example, and we realize how our customers, what their needs are and what their feelings are when they're using our systems. What we also did as our IT director, she wanted us to focus a bit on innovation. So we went to a 2-day conference site for a 2-day innovation conference where we had seminars and talks about innovation. And Daniel, you was actually one of those who organized it. And then we actually had the teams had problems that should solve, and then they went up to a Dragon's Den situation or a Shark Tank and presented their solutions to be judged. I don't think none of them really went live afterwards.
They were quite spectacular.
They were spectacular, right?
Least. Yeah.
Drones were involved in some of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, as I said, we realized that some of our teams didn't collaborate. We heard that they rather sent an email or made a Jira instead of go and talk to each other. Even though we're in the same workplace, we are just another corridor away. And this was one thing we really wanted to address. And since we're from Sweden, you know about the Swedish fika, right? So what could be the best thing to combine collaboration and fika and cinnamon buns? And in Sweden, we actually have almost mandatory. You need to go and have a coffee at 9 o'clock in the morning and 2:30 at our workplace. So we actually bought some cinnamon buns and said, come along at 2 o'clock this Wednesday and talk about DevOps. This started in February. The first one, only 30 attendees came. We were glad by the 30s, but only developers. And now in May, the last one we had, it's over 70 people came, and both dev and ops started discussing ideas and starting a bit collaboration between the different silos we actually have. What we also did is we arranged something we called show and tell. And that was an idea from one of our employees who worked at Ericsson. Ericsson has the same idea that they invite people to a 1-hour talk where you can submit a topic of interest and you speak for 15 minutes and you share ideas or just something you recently built that someone else could use. And we actually also had our business coming on to the IT department and talk about their experience of how do they use our system, how are they affected when our systems are going down. So our developers and our operators, our operation teams understand the reasons why we need to have high availability, for example. And as Daniel said, the last thing we've been focusing on is continuous delivery. And we realized through this journey, if we want to introduce DevOps in our organization, we need to build another type of skill set, start learning more. So we have arranged some courses in both, I'll skip that one. We have arranged some courses in both continuous delivery and DevOps in order to start learning these things, because we're seeing that teams are trying to improve, but the next step we need to educate each other. And also the leaders as well have gone some of these courses to understand what this implies to our organization.
Yeah, and one of the things that we wanted to address with the Phoenix project was aligning to strategy, because we think that the reason for doing DevOps is to be as fast as possible to bring business value. But we also think that you cannot always ask the customer what the business value is. And Steve Jobs once said that you cannot ask the customer what to. It's not their job to know what they want. And so let me give you one example. One of our main focus right now is to transform our government into a digital business. And this is, of course, nothing we can choose to do because it's happening around us. But we can choose to be disrupted or to disrupt ourselves. And as a government, this is kind of problematic because we are not going to be disrupted. There is no competition. No one else can do the job we are doing. So we have to disrupt ourselves. And that is exactly what strategy is. Strategy is the decisions you make to be competitive in the future. And we want to have these things into the Phoenix initiative too. This means that strategy is the customer too. We see strategy as the voice of the future customer. And we want this transformation to be something that we push, not we react to. So waiting for customers' demanding digital services is too late. We want to be preemptive. But this also means that sometimes the feedback loops are hitting us, because sometimes the users are not that ready for the digital way of doing things. And we think this is a hard thing, because you can have negative feedback on something you know is part of the future, because you have to move the customers too. And we have had a lot of discussions about this. Is this some kind of big design up front? Because we want to rely on real customer feedback. And one thing that can be confusion is if you have a lot of internal customers. Do you have internal customers? Yeah. And if you see internal customers and focus on internal customers, Steve Denning wrote this last week in Forbes. In agile management, there is no such thing as internal customers. The only purpose of work is the ultimate customer or the end user. And don't get us wrong, of course, the internal customers does a lot of things, and sometimes this is really value creation. But if you don't have a clear line of sight to the real value for the customer, chances are that you are sub-optimizing. We believe, therefore, that you have to have a healthy balance between continuous improvement and strategy. You have to have both what Lean calls kaikaku and kaizen. Kaikaku is the disruptive change, and kaizen is the continuous improvement. Maybe you have seen this quote: "The light bulb was not a result of continuous improvement of the candle." And of course, it's like that. So you have to have disruption as part of a process, especially in the digital age. So is this a way to, should we be afraid that this is some kind of big design upfront? No, we think that we have to have a value-driven solution design process that always validates the solution we do. I'm coming more to that later. We like the pattern: think big, start small, fail fast, or scale fast. So how can we inject this strategy thinking into the everyday development process? We think that the solution architecture practice is a natural way to incorporate this strategy in the normal process. But we have to rethink this architecture practice, because the traditional way of ivory tower architecture and the guys, the geeks with tie that once now and then came up from their office and complains about things in the real world, we cannot have that kind of architecture. We have to have architecture that brings real value and aligns strategy. So we want this value and solution focused architecture as a natural first step. And we see there is two main goals. The first is to make sure that the solutions are aligned with the strategy. And because we can make decisions about the future. We have the possibility to think and make decisions about the future. But at the same time, the second one is to make sure that the solutions are adaptive, because we cannot predict the future. We can know things exactly as we can plan a trip, but we don't know if a flight will be cancelled. So we have to adapt it to changes down the road. And to force us into the right mindset, we developed this mindset of seeing architecture as startup or entrepreneurial process. So just like the early phases in startup, we think that you have to validate your architecture as fast as possible in the cheapest possible way. To do this, we introduced this simple process that is based on both lean startup and design thinking. I won't go through this in detail, but I want to give you one example of how we have used this. We had this big project where we were asked to create or develop or buy a new document production system. And we have one that is home built, and the users' demands was quite clear. They said, we want something that looks like and walks and smells like Microsoft Word, but with the integrations that we have in our home-built one. But what we did was taking a step back and asked why. Why do you need this software? And we found two reasons. The first one was to keeping record of everything we do, and this is regulated by Swedish law that every agency have to keeping record. But we found there is other ways that is better to do that. And the second reason for creating documents is obvious. It's to communicate. So then we're asked, so what is the main communication channel we will use in the next 5 to 10 years? Because if we are going to invest in a new way, a new modern way to create documents, would this be the standard letter format? We don't think that printed letters is the main channel in the future. So we ended up with 2 principles. The first, we call them architectural principles, but you can call them strategic decisions if you want to. The first is, we shouldn't compose document manually. They should be generated from digital information inside our systems. And the second is, we should communicate with the best channel for purpose and not default to paper. And of course, this is not rocket science, but for us, this was two really important principles when we designed the system. So this is what we ended up in. Instead of the left one, where the users are composing mails by themselves, we now enter information and have that information digitally in our systems and can use that information for everything that you can do with digital information. And then we can generate information for any channel that we want to. So we can send this by mail or by paper or in the new Swedish digital mailbox that every citizen can have.
So, the results so far. Well, as we said, we tried this in a small scale in a pilot project, but we haven't scaled larger than this project so far. One of our development teams, actually the one that was participating in the pilot, we have one of our team members actually sitting down there. 1 year ago, we started measuring, 1.5 years, we started measuring how the lead time from commit to production. They had an average of 30 days back then. And now it's down to 3 days, right? Which we're really happy that this team has come so far. But we have 11 other teams that are making progress, but not as far as this team. Also, we believe that we should have a humane workplace. We believe that you should not be able to come to work on weekends. This has been the tradition at our place. Once a month on a Sunday night, many people come in and we do a large delivery. A couple of years ago, this was actually 85% of all of our deliveries were made on Sunday nights. This is something we try to come away from. The mindset is wrong. We should work on weekdays instead of weekends. And now, the last figures I saw, we're down to 35% of our deliveries on weekends. So this is something good. And the most positive thing is the positive feedback we are all getting in the department right now, the positive vibe that we're feeling. Here are some of the examples that quotes we've heard during the last couple of months. Really optimistic quotes. People are feeling hope that there's something going on at least. But we still have lots of things to do.
Yeah, as you might have noticed, we say a lot of things like we believe and we think, and of course we are in a learning process, and please go along with us. We're not now getting in the next phase and try to scale this up in a couple of new initiatives which is slightly bigger than the things we have done before. But we have a lot of things to learn. For example, if you have the solution for where we can put our architects, centralized, in team, or something between, please come to us and talk to us. Or if you have some other questions or something you want to share with us, please contact us. We are on Slack and we are on LinkedIn. So thanks a lot for listening.
Thank you.